But there's a little America, if you will, in many respects, Israel, which reflects the values of the United States, the principles of the United States, the belief in individual humanity and liberty, and a democratic system and a rule of law. And I've been a fierce defender of the state of Israel and the people of Israel, even when the media at CNN and MSNBC and all over the media attack this tiny little country every time this tiny little country is attacked by terrorists. Back in May, when Israel was subjected to terrorist attacks from Hamas, pushed by Iran and Hezbollah, the media reporting was shameful and shameless. There are more bigots in the media than we actually know, quite frankly. But what I'm talking about here is MSNBC and Steve Schmidt, because I've been accused, and other patriotic conservatives, but I, as a Jew, have been accused by a non-Jew with German heritage of partly being responsible for the slaughter of the Jews in that synagogue, for having blood on my hands. This is an MSNBC contributor. He hasn't been fired. He hasn't been suspended. He hasn't been reprimanded. Steve Schmidt, I believe, is a bigot. He's unhinged. And MSNBC is proud of him, like they're proud of Joy Reid, like they're proud of Al Sharpton. Lectures from MSNBC about temperament and tone. Well, 3 of those people shouldn't be working for MSNBC if they're serious about being professionals, journalists, and tone. Now, this guy, Steve Schmidt, I've never met him, and he better hope I never meet him. This is, once again, another illustration of how low the media have become in this country in the aggregate with their groupthink. The rabbi of the synagogue where this slaughter occurred had to push back on Alison Camerata on CNN, who was begging him to trash Trump. Another congregant, a congregant from the synagogue, had to push back against Andrea Mitchell on MSNBC, begging him to trash Trump. I've never seen such despicable conduct in my life. These people, these so-called journalists, have ice water in their veins. If they gave a damn about the carnage that took place, they wouldn't conduct themselves this way. And they're political opportunists. When some nut who likes Bernie Sanders is shooting at Republicans, critically wounding one, nobody blames Bernie Sanders in the media. When ricin is being sent to Trump, to Trump's kids, to people in his administration, to Republican senators, we don't hear all this quiet the tone about the Democrats from the media. We never hear it. And yet, here we have a man who slaughtered 11 human beings, who hates Jews and hates Trump. And you knew that the media, Jim Acosta, Andrea Mitchell, Alison Camerata, Chris Cuomo, Don Lemon, and all the rest of them, Jake Tapper, you knew that they were going to turn the blame on Trump. It's the tone of Trump, you see, because before Trump, everything was really great. The nation was united. Obama talked in pearls of wisdom. Biden was the nicest guy in the world. We never had the Bork hearings, the Clarence Thomas hearings. We never had the attacks on Reagan. Well, no, we never had any of this stuff. There was so much peace in our politics before Trump, wasn't there? Of course there wasn't. They downplayed Antifa. They dare not speak of Black Lives Matter. And as far as Farrakhan's concerned, embraced by the Democrats with a wink and a nod. 10 days ago, he calls Jews termites. He got barely no coverage. And Steve Schmidt is of that ilk. He's of the Farrakhan ilk. He's of the Sharpton and Joy Reid ilk. He's of the Andrea Mitchell and the Alison Camerata ilk. This guy is a parasite. He was a campaign operative for Republicans like John McCain. And he was on the outs with Trump. Like the other clown, Nicole Wallace. And so they're on a mission. These Trump haters. Whether it's Scarborough or that clown Mika Brzezinski, or Nicole Wallace, or this guy, or another jerk, Rick Wilson. They're all out there. All 12 of them. 12 of them. And MSNBC and CNN and the rest like to tell you, oh, these are Republicans, or former Republicans, you know. And even they hate Trump. Yeah, well, 90% of the Republicans support him. But I want to show you how sickening this gets. I want to show you how sickening this gets. I'm getting an award from the Zionists of America organization on Sunday. I received an award a few months ago from Emet, another pro-Israel organization. I went over to Israel to watch the ceremony of the opening of our embassy in Jerusalem. I broadcast, as you know, from Israel for 3 days. Natan Sharansky, Dory Gold, so many great people. America-loving Israelis. 90% of the Israeli people support Trump's actions with respect to Israel. Almost the converse in our own country, but you understand. A president who's so proud of his daughter, Ivanka Trump. She's an Orthodox Jew. So proud of his stepson, Jared Kushner, an Orthodox Jew. So proud of his 3 grandchildren from that couple, all Orthodox Jews. And the mass murderer was right. He's surrounded by Jews. He is. And Christians, too. But you get the point. We had the ambassador from Israel on this program, Ron Dermer, and he said that this president is the greatest friend Israel's ever had in the presidency, and it's not even close. The Anti-Defamation League is led by a former special assistant to Barack Obama. They pounce to attack this president. They don't represent this Jew, I can tell you that. There's a left-wing progressive organization of so-called Jewish leaders, quote-unquote, backed by Soros' son. They've been quoted all over the media that they don't want Trump in Pittsburgh. Who the hell are they? They don't represent anybody, just left-wing kooks. But the rabbi of the synagogue said, I'm a citizen, he's the president, of course we welcome him, despite being pressed by CNN. The other member of the synagogue, same thing. They thought you sure with the tone, the president says, hey, forget the politics. Says, as I recall, this guy didn't like Trump. Steve Schmidt, yesterday on MSNBC, cut 1, go.
We have to, 40% of the country has opted into an alternate reality.
Now stop. So you folks who support Trump or are Republicans, you're mentally ill. See, you're in an alternate reality. If a person's in an alternate reality, they're mentally ill. So here you go. This guy is condemning millions of people who he happens to disagree with. You're in an alternate reality. That is what counts as serious analysis at MSNBC. Go.
We have to wake up in this country and understand the danger that this presents to all of us. We can't put our heads in the sand. Kellyanne Conway...
The danger what represents to all of us? The mass murder? Yes. But he's talking about Trump. The danger he represents to all of us. Why, what has he done? Has he rounded up ethnic groups like FBR did? Did he resegregate the civil service and the military like Woodrow Wilson did? What is he talking about? Go ahead.
Today goes on national television. She said, well, this shooter's motives were because there's an anti-religious sentiment. No, ma'am.
Now stop. She said a hell of a lot more than that. But you can see what a flunky this guy is, what a stooge he is. Go ahead.
Propaganda industry that she commands with the vile president that she serves, abetted by Mark Levin and Rush Limbaugh and Breitbart and Newsbusters and Judicial Watch and all the rest of them, have blood on their hands for the incitements that they have made that have triggered and radicalized these crazy people.
Now, stop right here. You with your insane rantings, you nobody. You are a contemptible fraud. I, Rush, Breitbart, Judicial Watch, so forth, we haven't incited anybody to do anything like this. That we have triggered and radicalized these crazy people. That we have triggered and radicalized this mass murder. Let me tell you something, you punk, and you would never say this to my face. What was that website called, Mr. Producer? Storm something or Stormfront. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to Google Stormfront. Isn't that the name of it, Rich? And Mark Levin. Something like that. A neo-Nazi site. It's been taken down. I've been on there all the time with horns, with a tail, with a Star David on my chest, on my forehead. What's it called? Daily Storm or something like that. One of the people who used to contribute to that was that piece of crap that went into that black church and shot those 9 parishioners. Shot those 9 parishioners who brought them into their church. Who wanted to pray with them. And he sits there and he murders them. That site. And I wasn't going to say this. I have an active investigation going on right now. A neo-Nazi threatening me. I don't need this punk to tell me I have blood on my hands because one of them slaughtered 11 Jews. I am Jewish. And MSNBC has an obligation to its corporate board, to its investors, and more than that, the American people, to fire this ass. Because he's a bigot. I'll be right back. Oh, yes, Steve Schmidt. The refuge of society. They like to point out this exchange I had. How much time do I have, Rich? This exchange I had with this caller once. Where I told her to, basically, if I were her husband, you know, it was a bad, stupid joke 10 years ago about putting a gun in my mouth and ending it. It was a takeoff on a Churchill joke with Lady Astor when she said, Winston, if I were your wife, I'd poison your coffee. And he said, Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd drink it. Everybody knew it. It's a decade ago or what. That's what they bring up. See that? See, he changed the tone of the debate. You're very sick, pal, as are all the hosts over there who keep promoting this. Chris Matthews jumps in, drunk. At least he seems to be. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. We will move on. But I don't take this crap from these people. Take this crap from these people at all. I'll be right back. When MSNBC and Steve Schmidt talk about me, a Jew having blood on my hands, doesn't that remind you folks of the Third Reich? Doesn't it remind you of the Third Reich, Mr. Producer? I think so. They're bigots. I want to read you something from a rabbi, David Wolpe, from a site, a publication called The Tablet, which is an excellent publication. He's the rabbi of Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. And he recently wrote a book called Why Faith Matters. Just listen to this. All the folks in the audience, this isn't just about Judaism or rabbis or Jews. My synagogue is on the west side of Los Angeles. On a rough guess, about half my congregants support Donald Trump. Many of those who do, but certainly not all, are from the Persian community. We have had frank discussions. They know I deplore many of the things he says, and I oppose much of what he does. They know that I have criticized publicly and privately the inflammatory rhetoric of his presentations and warned them of its effects. They also know that we respect and listen to one another, that I do not preach politics at them, but I do speak with them and learn from them, and that our relationship in many cases is not only one of affection, but of genuine love. So when I see major American Jewish figures tell me that my congregants are illegitimate, my blood boils a little bit. After the tragedy in Pittsburgh, perhaps because I spend so much of my time at the bedside of the sick and dying, I expected that the first impulse of Jews in particular would be to simply offer messages of sorrow and condolence. It's what I imagined I would read when I opened a prayer for Squirrel Hill and for American Jewry from Franklin Fuhr, whom I know somewhat and have always respected. Instead, I read this, quote, "Any strategy for enhancing the security of American Jewry should involve shunning Trump's Jewish enablers. Their money should be refused, their presence in synagogues not welcome," unquote. In other words, more than half of my Sabbath morning congregants, Shabbat, and in some more traditional synagogues, almost all of them, should have the doors barred against their entry. Jews who make minions, pay Shiva calls, underwrite nursing homes and kindergartens, people who make Judaism possible with their flawed but real human presence for other people, should be cast out of their midst because of the levers they pull in the privacy of a voting booth. And what, after all, would a Jew who fled from Iran know about anti-Semitism or protecting the Jewish community, right? As Shabbat ended in Los Angeles, a city where in 1999 there was a terror attack against the Jewish Community Center, I saw this from another reporter, whose work I've always esteemed very highly, Julia Ihoff. "And a word to my fellow American Jews," she said. "This president makes this possible here where you live. I hope the embassy move over there where you don't live was worth it." In other words, the embassy move is what caused the killing in Pittsburgh, you see. And she has a voice on MSNBC. They're very proud of her. The calculation here, I suppose, is that people voted for Trump to get an embassy move and their vote proxy murdered other Jews. How careful should one be? Should a distinguished reporter be when accusing others of such enormities, even indirectly? And this goes to this guy Schmidt, a good little German. How do people think this message will fall on the ears of those who fled from Iran, to be told that they are in fact guilty in the death of Pittsburgh's Jews? Or even more shamefully, on the ears of Judah Samet. Mr. Samet, a Holocaust survivor, escaped death by 4 minutes before he was a little late to shul. Because he was. He's also a strong supporter of Trump. Frank, Julia, would you stand before this 80-year-old man, not in a tweet or online piece, but face-to-face, and tell him he's responsible for the death of his friends, the people with whom he prays each Shabbat? Would you bar him from the shul where he almost died again at the hands of Jew haters? Really? And that would make us the righteous ones. There is much that smart journalists and observers like these folks say that I agree must be said. Yes, we must be vigilant and aware and ready to spot and combat the virus of hatred. Yes, we must call out public voices, from the president on down, who speak in ways we believe endangers or radicalizes the population, he writes. But my congregants are not the ones who are dangerous, and manipulating responsibility to turn Jews into perpetrators is ethically appalling and communally toxic. We can only be a Jewish people when we don't excommunicate each other for religious reasons or political reasons or cultural reasons. Everyone is welcome to pray in my synagogue, right or left, no matter how much I, as rabbi, may object to your views. Because we do not pray as Democrats or Republicans, but as Jews. Now let us tear our clothes and mourn the dead. Rabbi David Wolpe. There are rabbis and then there are rabbis. There are priests and then there are priests. There's preachers and then there are preachers. They're really good ones, you can tell at times like this. Like Wolpe. Like the rabbi at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. And there are good reporters and bad reporters. There's good commentators and bad commentators. And unfortunately, most of the reporters are bad and have been awful. And same with most of the commentators on MSNBC and CNN and some others. I do not think that Schmidt and Matthews, neither of whom are Jewish, understand that when they tell a Jew that he has blood on his hands, when a Jew hater walks into a synagogue and murders 11 people, what a slander that is. You out there, most of whom aren't Jewish, you understand. But these insane ideologues with their talking points, who want to see their names in the media, they don't care. They could care less. These are insane ideologues. And they're given a platform, and they're given a voice. And when you really think about it, it is the owners of Comcast. It is the executives of NBC and MSNBC who not only tolerate this, but perpetuate it. It is the owners of Time Warner and CNN and the executives of these corporations who perpetuate this even more than tolerate it. They know what's going on these media platforms that they own. And I've come to conclude that their hosts and their paid contributors reflect the views of the investors and owners of Time Warner and Comcast, the New York Times and the Washington Post. I've come to believe this, because otherwise, why would they tolerate it? This isn't freedom of the press. This isn't the press. Not as traditionally understood, not as historically understood. These are hate machines. MSNBC is a hate machine. Chris Matthews, Christopher Hayes, I don't even know the guy, Schmidt and the other, these are haters. These are vile human beings who just blurt out these comments for which they are celebrated in some crazy dark corner of our society. You look at MSNBC's ratings. They're minuscule. You look at CNN's ratings, they're even smaller. So what are they doing? A smaller and smaller audience. A more radicalized view. They're desperate. They're desperate. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
This guy, Chris Matthews, has tried this before. As you know, he used to be a flack for Tip O'Neill and then a speechwriter for Jimmy Carter, both of whom were illiterate. He's pulled this stuff before. He's a Democrat hack. His wife is a Democrat hack. He comes from a long family of Democrat hacks. Then he writes these books like he's some kind of historian. Right, Mr. Bitters? Didn't his publisher or publicist contact us and ask us to put him on the radio? The guy is a complete media prostitute. And he's dumb as hell. When Gabby Giffords was shot and the federal judge was murdered and that guy was a complete nut, he wasn't motivated by politics at all, he immediately came after Sarah Palin, me, and Michael Savage. Now we have a Jew hater who hates Trump, who slaughters 11 congregants, Jewish temple goers. And he brings on the bigot, Steve Schmidt, in order to give him voice after what he already said. And this is MSNBC. So I have to believe that Comcast wants this. I have to believe NBC supports this. I have to believe Andrew Lack, who just fired Megyn Kelly over a blackface comment, I have to believe Andrew Lack has no problem with this bigot. No problem with Joy Reid. No problem with Al Sharpton. Or the entire lineup. Or they wouldn't be there. I have to believe Time Warner has no problem with CNN. But I have to believe that over there, Andrew Lack has no problem with Joe and Mika. Here they were this morning. Cut 11, go.
But the problem here, Mika, is not only is the media arm complicit.
So Fox is the media arm of Trump, you see. Despite the fact a Harvard study said that 52% of the Fox stories are negative to Trump and 48% are positive. That is, it is, whether people want to hear this or not, it is the most legitimate news outlet going. 80% negative from CNN. 80%. Go ahead.
Yeah. Listen, they are actively engaging in the fear-mongering and the lying and the hatred and the racism.
This is what we
when you talk about the others bringing smallpox to America when it was eradicated, as Willie said, in 1980.
You're not right.
You're talking about leprosy being brought to the United States by a caravan that is not going to even exist by the time it gets up to the United States if what happened in April happens this time as well. You have members of Congress that are spreading this hatred as well. So no, they are far worse than complicit. Their hands, their fingerprints are all over this lie. They are spreading this racist lie. Think about this. Think about this if you're a stockholder of a certain media company. The stock that you were
just
holding.
Listen to his inane incoherence. He's so filled with rage. He's so furious that he's a small timer on TV. He's got to keep playing to that social circle. You see, Joe Scarborough's not a racist. Well, how do we know? Because he says so. Well, how do we know? Because he says so. Mika Brzezinski's not a racist. Well, how do we know? She says so. And by calling other people racist, you see, as Shelby Steele has pointed out, written, has discussed frequently, you see, you cleanse yourself. And now you project onto somebody else. How do we know Joe Scarborough is not a racist? How do we know Mika Brzezinski's not a racist? We don't know anything about them. What kind of neighborhood do they live in? What kind of schools do their kids or did their kids go to? How do they treat minorities in their private lives? Are they with minorities in their private lives? We don't have any idea. None. None. And then there's Don Lemon. This man's a real hater. Cut 12, go.
I keep trying to point out to people not to demonize any one group or any one ethnicity.
Now stop right there. Now typically, when one of these hacks say that, they mean the opposite. I keep trying to point out to people not to demonize any one group or any ethnicity, but... Go ahead.
Keep thinking that the biggest terror threat is something else. Some people who are marching, towards the border like it's imminent. And when the last time they did this, a couple hundred people came and they, most of them
First of all, the president didn't create this. Fox News didn't create this. You didn't create this. This has received an enormous amount of publicity from the people who created this. We know there's some leftists south of the border, some leftists north of the border. So we didn't create this. You and I didn't create this. People have announced, and people on their behalf have announced that they're marching toward the border. Thousands and thousands of illegal aliens, or would-be illegal aliens. That does not concern the left. But regular Americans of all races and backgrounds and creeds, Latino, African American, Asian, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, white, black, brown, yellow, red, albino, it concerns most Americans. We know this for a fact. Not because we're racist, because it's wrong. Go ahead.
Country. Most of them got tuckered out before they even made it to the border. So we have to stop demonizing people and...
Nobody's demonizing people. We want the rule of law enforced. Nobody's demonizing anybody. Nobody's saying we don't want those people here because of their skin, or those people here because they're from this country or that country or the other country. I mean, it gets confusing, ladies and gentlemen. I thought we were supposed to hate the Russians, for instance. All Russians. Well, maybe the liberals can give us a list of ethnicities and so forth, who we're supposed to like and who we're not supposed to like. Go ahead.
Biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
White men radicalized to the right. And those of us who believe in individual liberty, the Constitution and the Declaration, and limited government, private property rights, who believe in faith, family, and reject the progressive agenda, we're on the right, you see. We're out there with the neo-Nazis and the Klan, you see. Really despicable. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, the problem in America is white men, according to Don Lemon. And apparently CNN and Comcast think that's good news. That's rational analysis. The problem's white men. I'll be right back. I really think we need to look at this at a different level now. Who are the puppet masters? Don Lemon doesn't think for himself. Joe Scarborough doesn't think for himself. None of these people do. They're being encouraged to do what they do. They're being encouraged to do what they do. Jeff Zucker runs CNN. But who runs Jeff Zucker? Over at Time Warner. The faceless, nameless suits. The corporate executives who enrich Zucker, who enrich all the editors and producers and anchors and hosts. Who are the suits? Who are the executives, the faces and the names behind MSNBC and NBC, beyond Andrew Lack, that flunky, over at Comcast? You people have Comcast cable? Well, you're paying for MSNBC. Who are these people? Why do they want to bring down our president? Why do they want to install Democrats in the House of Representatives and in the Senate? You got to look behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz. And who are these people behind the curtain? We spend a lot of time, rightly so, dealing with the mental midgets that are these anchors and hosts and guests and all the rest. They are the mental midgets of Comcast. They are the mental midgets of Time Warner. Who are they? The masterminds. It's not a conspiracy. Look, these are corporations like any other corporation. And they have these employees who are out front. They can see what their employees are doing. Don't tell me they don't have any say in this. Of course they do. They've created these hate machines. And these hate machines are constantly trashing the notion of constitutionalism, private property rights, individualism, and Republicans. Not to mention this president. So what do they want? They want power. That's what they want. You might think these corporations, well, they should be conservative. Don't they believe in capitalism? No, they don't believe in capitalism. They believe in centralized, concentrated government power. So they have individuals or an individual they can work with to get what they want. That's why. In my humble opinion. So who are the masterminds behind the flunkies and the stooges?